Welcome everyone to our Learn With Us workshop series that we're hosting here at the Woodstock Chamber of Commerce. These workshops give us an opportunity to share some insights into different areas that we are, believing that people want to hear more about. It's a free workshop series that highlights many of our members, the work they do, and to provide some, industry insights. So this month we have Jerusalem Berhan from Berhan Immigration and Settlement Services, alongside Trish Gill of Ladder HR to talk about new immigration rules and how to minimize labor impact. The presentation that we're seeing today has been put together by Hermaine Carter, student and mentee to Trish. I believe he is on the call, so good morning. Trish, did you want to, I'm sorry, Jerusalem. Did you want to say
Oh,
good morning and share
sure.
a bit about yourself?
Yes, yes. Thank you, Mike. Yes, hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this early morning. My name is Jerusalem Berhane. I'm an immigration consultant. I have been in this practice for a very long time now. My expertise are an LMIA, labor market impact assessment, and we also help companies with different types of categories on how to bring in foreign talent. So we have our offices here in London, Ontario, and Woodstock as well. And yeah, we're worldwide, so we serve clients globally. I'll pass it on to Trish.
Well, good morning, everyone. Hang on, I just got to bring up uh, my bio. I'm with Ladder HR Solutions. I have been an HR practitioner for over 25 years. Um, you know, Generalist, so I've worked on everything from compensation, employee relations, etc. Happy to be here today. We provide at Ladder HR, we provide guidance to many different industry sectors, including private healthcare, not-for-profits, small startups, construction, etc., like the whole gambit. My background is also in project management. I've done many projects in terms of implementation and automation, focusing primarily on HR systems and financial systems. They usually go together. And finally, I'm a career coach and general leader and employee coach, helping and guiding leaders and employees towards their career goals, as well as helping recently terminated employees find their next adventure through outplacement services. I also wanted to mention again, I have with me Herman Gartner, who has generously helped me do the research behind the presentation today. He's a dedicated professional who's leveraging a rich background in legal counsel and senior advisory roles to complete a graduate certificate in international business management from Fanshawe and a graduate diploma in human resources at Western University. We have been introduced through Will Employment Solutions, and I'm mentor to Herman. And Herman, thank you so much for all your help.
Thank you,
That's
Trish.
excellent. That's wonderful. Okay, so shall we start the presentation?
That sounds
Okay,
wonderful.
so all right, so I will be sharing my screen. So the way we'll do this presentation is I'll do the immigration part of it first, and then we will do, Trish will do hers for the HR related information, and we will do the question and answer at the end. So hope to have enough time to address all the questions that will come. So here we are. All right, so everybody can see the presentation. So I already discussed who I am. So today I'll start with the LMIA updates. So with the updates from the labor market impact assessment, I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with the labor market impact assessment. Usually if you are an HR, I'm sure you have come across it or somebody has come and asked you about it, especially if it is an individual on a temporary foreign work permit. So the new LMIA certificate, it used to be valid for 12 months. but now it's valid for 6 months. So I will explain a little bit briefly of what it is for those of you that are not very familiar. So the government says, okay, for an employer that's looking to hire, let's say, a supervisor at a construction site, and they advertise the job and they cannot find anybody that's a Canadian citizen or permanent resident that's qualified to do the job. Then they will go through this LMIA application process through ESDC. So they would advertise the job for 30 days to show that they have done all the recruitment efforts and they've interviewed those that are qualified maybe, and they may not be available to do the work, but they need to show that recruitment. Then they submit the application. ESDC will then assess the application and they say, okay, here is the certificate. Now you can go ahead and hire a foreign talent. So this certificate used to be valid for 12 months, and now in the last policy changes, they've decreased the amount to 6 months. Okay, so what this 6 months is from the time that LMIA is approved for you to use that document for the individual to apply for work permit. If it passes the 6 months, then the LMIA has to be redone, has to go through the same process again. So that's what it means. So employers will also need to explore recruiting asylum seekers. This used to not be the case before, but now asylum seekers will also have an open work permit. So that means that they will qualify. You have to also try to hire asylum seekers before you bring in another a foreign talent from outside Canada or the ones that are here. So as of January 1st, employers are also required to annually review the wage. If there is a wage increase, to increase the wage to reflect the prevailing wage, which we will look at in a little bit. But if not, I think that would come in another presentation. But the rate, if there is a wage increase, it has to be increased. If it's already at a high level, then you cannot bring it down, but it can stay the same. Okay, another change that they've made also is as of September 26th, certain applications submitted for low wage positions have been affected in a way that now the government says, okay, if the metropolitan areas have over a 6% unemployment rate, then they cannot hire, they cannot do the LMIA certificate for that area, such as, let's say, London. London, we are over 6%. So an employer cannot hire individuals for as a low wage, which would count as a low wage if it is lower than, if they're paying them lower than $34. High wage, they can go through it because if they are still for high wage, they also have to pay more than $34. If that's the case, then the 6% doesn't apply to them. They also
Hold
made a
on.
change.
I'm so sorry to interrupt, Jerusalem. I don't think are you in the middle of the presentation right now? We still only see the title card, and I didn't know if you had moved on from.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah,
So,
I'm so sorry to interrupt.
yeah, no problem. Let me see if I can. My
Right
apologies.
now, how I see it, I can see like your toolbar and everything. So even on the left-hand navigator
Oh,
with all your
okay.
slides, if you could click to the one that you're chatting about. Yeah, I can see your mouse moving around right now. So
Oh, okay. So it's not showing the full.
no, it just there we go. Now it's moved over, but it's not full
Oh,
screen. But this still works okay.
yeah. Okay. I was,
Okay. My apologies for the disruption.
no, sorry about that. Let me see if I can move this. Okay. Do you see the full amount now? The full? No? Still?
No, I don't see
No?
full, but we can
Okay.
see the new measures for
The
low.
new measure.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I'm not sure why my screens are all over the place. So I'll see if I can. Okay. Are we still good, Mike?
No, it was better before.
Oh, sorry.
Now I
Here?
just your Zoom screen. Yeah, yeah, this works. Just as long as you go down where your mouse is now and you click on those slides as you talk, it'll be.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
hoping to get it as a full slide. But
Perfect.
okay. 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 All right. We'll go ahead anyway for time's sake. So anyway, so the cap proportion for low wage will be that um, for the positions, So these are the 20%. So another thing, so I think I'll go back a little bit actually, Mike. So if we go back to the little bit here, so the government also made a cap. So let's say the second portion here. So in some sectors, the current cap is at a 20%. So let's say if it was construction or healthcare, it used to be at a 30%, and now they lowered it to 10%. And the other part, they lowered it to 10%. So for example, if you have temporary foreign workers that are more than 10% of your total employee that you have for that specific business, then you will not be able to hire anyone that's on a low wage. Okay, they have to be, if they are on a high wage, paid more than $34, then the company can apply for an LMIA. So the maximum employment duration also for low wage, again, anybody that's paid less than $34 is the low wage, is for now, it used to be 2 years and now it's 1 year. If it is high wage, more than $34, then they can get the work permit for 3 years. Okay, so these are the ones that I was mentioning earlier, that the following sectors and subsectors, the cap for the proportion that you can hire are at a 20% only because they are construction and healthcare. Okay. So for this one here, wage threshold increase and change in attestation. So the other change that they've made starting November 8 was that the wage, remember how I was saying the high wage and the low wage? For the high wage, they increased it by 20%. So if it was you were paying somebody at a $20 or $24, the median wage, and now they increased it by 20%. We are at a 4. So if I go to the next slide here, so you can see here before the LMIA was revised, it used to be for Ontario 28 and 39. Now they increased it by 20%. Now it's 34 or 7. So if an employer wants to hire someone on a high wage, then they have to pay them more than the $34. Okay. If it is anything less than that, then it will count as a low wage, and they also can hire 10% of their employment, that the employees that they have, if they want to hire a temporary foreign worker. Okay, so that's what it means. Another thing that they changed was any employer that's applying for an LMIA now, to proof that they can pay the wage, they have to get an attestation letter from the bank. It used to be that a lawyer could do it or an accountant could do it, but now it has to be from the bank. So no more accepted by lawyers or chartered accountants. It has to be by a manager at the bank that they do their services with. Okay. So we discussed about, so the government has the median wage for everybody, all the provinces. So anybody that's applying can look into this. Any application that's submitted that's lower than this wages will be refused. Okay, so now keep proper records. If you have any temporary foreign worker that you hired, whether it's through LMIA or if they have open work permits, make sure you keep the documents for at least 6 years, the wages, their contracts, because you need to follow compliance. Okay, and at any time, ESDC can come and check, and they want to make sure that, especially those that you hire through an LMIA, because you're saying that we're paying them this amount, these are the duties that they're going to complete. If that has changed within that work permit, then you can be penalized as an employer, and also your name can go into a blacklist where then in the future, if you want to apply for an LMIA, you will be refused. Okay. So hiring international students, we see that now we have a lot of international students that are either hired through while they're in school, or you can also hire them while they are once they finish their education. So respect to the validity of the work permits, do not let foreign workers start working to continue if their work permit has expired. Okay, make sure that they've requested for an extension and that you need to see that they provide you that extension to continue working. Any application, I know as an employer, maybe Trish can speak to it later. A lot of employers, the concern is that you cannot legally ask if the individual, you can ask them if they can legally work in Canada. But I believe, again, I could be corrected on that. A lot of employers struggle because they cannot ask for how long the validity of the work permit ahead of time.
That's correct. Yeah.
Right. So a lot of them are struggling because employees will start and they're there for 2 months or 6 months and then the work permit expires. That's okay, but some of them do qualify to extend their work permits, but you just have to make sure that you're following up with them. All right, so respect to continuation of the work permits. Again, workers only have employers listed on their closed work permit. They cannot go and work with someone else, first off, and then their work permits has to be within the hours and the duties that's outlined on the work permit if they are on a closed work permit. And they must stop working once their study permit, their work permit expires. Okay, verify the dates, verify the location on the work permits and all of those. So as an employer, you are responsible to check these documents. Okay, don't rely only on the employee. Okay, so this part here is the new rules around off-campus work hours. So if you have an international student that's working with you, the temporary policy allowing students to work more than 20 hours per week has ended on April 30th, which is in a way they gained 4 more hours. So now international students are allowed to work 24 hours per week off campus while in class. So that would be from September to, let's say, December, and during the holidays, they can work full time. But after that, they have to be within the working hours of the 24 hours. Okay. All right. So. So you can still see Mike. So I just want to confirm that the monitors, I have 2 monitors here that are mixed. We're good with the
Yes,
screens?
we
Okay,
are.
good. So international students, they can continue to work after they finish their study program. So generally, if let's say they've finished their studies within let's say now is the time. So April, they finish their studies. And if they receive their completion of their studies and they have not applied for the open work permit, they cannot continue working with you. So sometimes international students are working with an employer and they would they would switch them to a full time. But if they have not submitted for the postgrad work permit, they must stop working. So usually students are, they can submit the open work permit immediately. They can, so that way there is no interruption. However, if they decide to wait because they have 180 days to apply for the postgrad work permit, the open work permit, that's their choice, but they must stop working. Okay, but if they do apply for the open work permit, they are applying before their study permit expires, so they can have that continuation of employment. And as an employer, the work is not interrupted. The idea is that there is no, gap, that they can continue working with you. Okay, so how can they show a potential employer that they're allowed to work while they wait for the postgrad work permit? If once they submit their application to the government saying that I finished my education and now I would like to get my either a 1 year or a 3 year postgrad work permit, the government understands that, and then within about 24 hours to 48 hours, they send them this extension to continue working. And they can use this document to show that they are eligible to continue working with the employer, and they will also be the SIN number will also continue from what they had their study permit, or they can try to get another a new social insurance number. Sometimes Service Canada can issue a new one. Then they will have now this work permit extension is given to them for a year. This is a document to show the employer that you can continue to employ them. However, we're still processing the work permit. So because government is delayed on a lot of processing applications, they gave this work permit extension for a year now. So the employee can continue working with you for a year, and once their open work permit gets approved, then they can continue working with you for another year or more. And what does the document look like? So the document, this is what they will be bringing you, confirming that the application has received. IRCC received the document on this day, and that the work permit can continue, the individual can continue working, and this until this day. So you see here the November, this is the date that you want to look at. Even then, if that date comes, let's say November 7 arrives, and they still haven't received their approved work permit, they can continue to work with you as an employer until a decision is made on the work permit. Okay, so a lot of times we get questions on this, can this person continue working? Or some do terminate them. But if the employer wants to keep them, they can continue working until a decision is made on the work permit. Okay. So my work permit expired, but I have maintained status. Can I keep working under the same condition? And this is what I just discussed about. So yes, the employee can continue working even if the SIN is expired. Service Canada understands, CRA understands, so the employer shouldn't worry about it. They can continue employing them and continue with the payroll with CRA as well. Okay. Um, so they're renewing the social insurance number that comes only if they get their work permits. So, but as an employer, what we usually say is with the extension to continue working, you can continue to employ them even if the SIN number has expired, because Service Canada will not issue them until they get that approved work permit. Okay. So this is a different category now. We moved from how do you hire them based on the LMIA, which is a closed work permit. They can only work for you when they have that work permit. And then we moved to an international student, which they will then get an open work permit, which they can work for any employer. And now I want to talk about the OINP, the Ontario Nominee Program, how you can support them to transition into permanent residency. So supporting employees through the OINP is a great way to retain your skilled workers, reduce the recruitment and training costs. That way you don't have to rehire, and then address the long-term staffing needs. So OINP is a direct pathway to permanent residency. But this needs an employer support. So the employer, first off, has to be in business for the past 3 years, more than 3 years if possible, and must have also earned, if they're based outside of Toronto area, their gross revenue must be 500,000. If it is in the metropolitan Toronto area, then it has to be over $1 million. So how does this work? It's just 3 steps. So let's say if you have an employee, they create first off, they need to discuss it with you. If you're willing to support them, there is a form as an employer you need to complete, but everything else is done through the employee. They create an expression of interest, and if they get invited, they have 14 days to submit the application. At that point is when an employer will be requested to complete that form. Usually I suggest that form to be completed ahead of time. And that's the involvement of the employer. Other than that, the heavy lifting is done by the employee. If the work permit is coming to an end, then an employer could also support them to get the work permit application as well. Sorry, Mike, I think I have. I sincerely apologize about this with my screens here. The slide. So this is the OINP. Like I said, this presentation can also be shared with those that are here present today, so you can go over it as well. But for the OINP, if an employee comes and talks to you about it from an employer perspective, the requirement or the need is that you only have to be more than 3 years in business and gross revenue is over 500. Other than that, um, if you need to support them later on for a work permit, then can come in handy to extend their work permit. If not, the involvement from the employer is at a very minimum. Okay, but the opportunity is there to transition them to permanent residency. So employer from form is required. As I said, this is to show that how many employees you have, your revenue. It's not very exhaustive. You're not sharing a lot of company information. But if as an employer, you're worried about sharing that information, whether with the employee or the representative, then there is an opportunity that the employer could also send that document directly to OINP. Okay. So yeah, so again, the employer form is available online, which we can share with you as well. But if you go into the OINP website and you look at the employer form, you can have it, but it kind of, you have to fill out the first form to let you go to the next one. But as I mentioned, it's really not exhaustive and it can be sent to to OINP directly. So I want to support my worker, but I don't feel comfortable providing business information. Like I said, this information can be shared, and that shouldn't stop you really. You can have that direct contact with OINP. It's more of how you transition your employee, the one that you want to keep into permanent residency so they can continue working with you. Another thing is, can an employer support multiple employees through the OINP? And yes, as long as the employer meets the eligibility criteria for each position, then you can support your temporary foreign workers. Are there any fees for the employers? So the fee is only if the work permit is expiring. There is an opportunity to extend the work permit, and that only is $230, the government processing fee. Other than that, the fee is paid by the candidate once that's a permanent residency application or the application to OINP, which is 1,500 to OINP. And then if they pass through to permanent residency, then the federal government will charge a permanent fee as well, but nothing to the employer. All right, but the work permit, again, this is the final. So if they do get approved, then you will get a confirmation of nominee for the employer and the employee. And if they decide to support them, again, for the work permit, they can do that. But usually you may also have employees that already have a 2-year work permit by the time they receive this document. Then you don't need to go through the work permit extension. Then they will go straight to permanent residency. But if you do need to support them, the fee, as I mentioned, is $230 paid by the employer. And this cannot be recouped from the employee. Okay. So I guess for the sake of time, we will move forward. This was already explained. Don't hire employees with expired work permit. Keep track of the work permits. Make sure that it's your responsibility as an employer to follow with your employees to make sure that they have valid. If it is expiring, you need to follow up with them because you need to be in compliance with the staff that you have. But hiring temporary foreign worker is a great asset. We see it from our employers. We've dealt with agriculture, construction, healthcare, hospitality, and all our employers are extremely satisfied because there is no turnaround and there is no gap in transition. So if that's the area that you're looking for, feel free to contact us, and I'd be happy to do a discovery call so I can answer any questions that you have in this regard. Okay, I will pass it on to Trish.
Awesome. Thanks, Jerusalem. So I will share my screen. There you go. Here. These applications change and just, oh, there we go. There's the sharing screen. And share. And hopefully you can see my screen. And we'll launch. Everybody can see my screen okay?
We can see the areas where it says talking notes and stuff as well too. Like we see the presenter view right now.
Perfect. Okay, let's just extend that as much as we can. Okay, well, Jerusalem, thank you so much for that information. I actually wrote down a couple of questions myself from that. So I've been learning a lot about the new immigration changes as an HR professional providing support to other organizations. I do see, especially when you've got the skilled labor, I do see individuals coming in with a work permit after they've finished their studies. And it's interesting because, many years ago, you just didn't know what to do with it. And now I think, there's more information. And so as an HR practitioner, I feel more comfortable. And knowing kind of how the process works was really helpful. So thanks everybody for coming. What I'll be talking about is the changes and how that impacts your labor force. And then we're going to put a focus on employee retention as a result. So you already know who I am. You already know the company that I work for. So I will just go over that. Also, Berhan, who is assisting me today and who has done a lot of research for this. We've gone over that, so I'm just going to carry on. So what I'd like to know from the individuals who are here today, I'd love to know what brought you here. What is your interest? If we could take a couple of minutes, I'd love to hear what you're interested in or the situation that you're looking at. And so hopefully we can cover that is my goal.
So if anyone would like to share, feel free to either include it in the chat or you can come onto the microphone and share your interest in signing up today. What is it you're looking for perspective on?
Hi, my name is Karen Mello. Sorry I'm off camera. I normally would be on camera. I have a sick little one at home with me, so maintaining
No
her
problem.
privacy. But I'm glad to be here. This is a really interesting topic. I work as an employer engagement specialist with Women's Employment Resource Center, so an Employment Ontario office, and we support a lot of clients who are navigating the immigration work permit LMIA process. So just deepening our understanding of current requirements, how we can support those clients as they move through the system. And we also have some individuals on our staff who are working through the same. So we want to be better equipped to support within and outside of our organization. So thank you for putting this on. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Karen. Thanks for sharing. That's wonderful. So Dawn, Renew, any comments? Okay, no problem. So what we're going to cover today is just an overview of the employer impact, how this is going to affect employers due to the immigration changes, some sector-specific challenges that we predict and have already seen in the past, leveraging the Ontario Immigration Nominee Program. More than ever, your retention of your current workforce is key. So we're going to give you some retention strategy tips, and then we'll look at the current unemployment rate because it's quite curious in today's economy and in conjunction with the changes on the immigration. So a key policy change impact. So with the LMIA change, as Jerusalem said, there's a 20% wage threshold increase. The sector that is going to most impact is manufacturing, agriculture, and construction. And the risk level is a high. So this is going to affect, we predict 34,000 roles, which is quite a bit in Ontario. The program, the postgraduate work permit, and this is the one that I'm most familiar with, a field of study restrictions are, STEM, healthcare, and trades. The sector impacted is tech, healthcare, and education. And we'll see a moderate risk level at this with a 28% eligibility reduction. So this is our skilled labor that we often look for. And then finally, the agri-food pilot. This was a program that was put in place a couple of years ago. They've terminated the program, and it touches on the agriculture and food processing. And this is critical because actually the government has allowed these individuals to come into Canada looking for permanent residence, but now they're not able to do that. And so their work permits will expire, and then they'll have to return to their home country. So this is critical, and it's predicted to be 5,200 workers stranded. So key is quite an impact on things that are going on today. So sector-specific challenges. So agriculture, typically you have a high seasonal turnover during harvest. And now, you're not going to be able to as easily replace people who leave because of the shortages that you're going to experience. Manufacturing, safety, communication gaps. So I've seen this. I actually did a study with an organization in Kitchener, and they wanted to know some of the difficulties that their foreign workers were having because they couldn't seem to retain it. And so we actually did some interviews, both with the foreign workers and with the workers working beside them. And what we found was a lot of foreign workers, because there's a cultural shift from their home country to Canada in the employment sector, are fearful of asking questions because they perceive it as looking as incompetent, and they don't want to do that, right? So 62% of temporary foreign workers avoid asking questions, and this could be a real safety hazard if there's a safety issue. And we've got some tips on how to deal with that. Healthcare with the postgraduate work permit restrictions on support staff. And of course, this is 2023, so these may have changed a little bit, but there was a 17% vacancy rate with PSWs. There's still a vacancy rate. PSWs are a really difficult area to not only hire, but to retain as well. And construction, the LMIA caps and permit refusals. So with the 20% workforce cap, there'll be rising denials. And then the tech industry, same thing. There'll be denials, but also there's 6 to 8 month processing time. So again, slowing down your recruitment efforts. So again, leveraging the Ontario Immigration Nominee Program. This is definitely something that you want to look at if you have an individual on a temporary work permit and you want to keep that skilled labor that you have. So we talk about HR should be familiar with this, including its different streams and how it can contribute to filling skill gaps in Ontario and the job market. And so addressing labor shortages, it helps retain international students and temporary workers. It gives access to skilled workers. There's no LMIA required, and it does enhance workforce planning. So understanding how to navigate that is key. And again, there's quite a bit of information on it if you want to research it a little bit more on ontario.ca. So one of the things we wanted to talk about too is, not only, and this probably applies to the LMIA in the recruitment sector. So not only are there immigration changes, but there's also changes to, the recruitment aspect and the job postings within Ontario. So now we have to disclose compensation ranges, and you can't have more of a spread than $50,000. You have to declare that there's AI use in hiring, and this is usually with your applicant tracking systems. We have to remove the Canadian experience requirements, and that I think is the big one, and that has been the biggest, I think, barrier for foreign workers coming to Canada and trying to get their first job, is just getting that Canadian experience. And then, and this is new, it'll start in July, to provide pre-employment information before the first date of hire. And there's some information on that as well that you can look into. And so with this, and again, with the Ontario Immigration Nominee Program, you really need to explore, your workforce development programs. So again, if you're experiencing potential labor shortages, looking ahead, partnering with local colleges, training providers, and employment agencies to fill those gaps and build those pipelines of local talent through apprenticeships, skill trainings, and employment services. I can tell you, in working with career transition candidates, finding apprenticeships it's very difficult. I think it has always been difficult. I think the government's having different initiatives in order to create more apprenticeship opportunities, but this still seems to be a difficult one to navigate for employers, which is interesting. So again, and as Jerusalem talked about, know your obligations. Ensure you have a list of all your employees currently on the temporary work permit, and know your obligations under the temporary foreign work program. Have a conversation with your staff who are on the temporary work permit to ensure that they're looking into obtaining permanent residence and they're getting that application. Make sure that they provide evidence that they've looked into getting that application, and also know the local resources available to them should they require assistance. Often these individuals will come to the employer, and if you have the resources that you can hand over to them, it makes it easier for them to know who to contact. And so immigration consultants like Jerusalem and legal, there are legal immigration lawyers out there that can help as well. So more than ever, retention of your current workforce is key. So here's some strategy tips. So some immediate actions that you can take. And again, this is kind of, this is the research, but it's also things that we learned when we interviewed some employers and kind of what some of the barriers that they're looking at. So we talked about safety systems and how that can affect retention of foreign workers. Workers in manufacturing and agriculture avoid reporting safety issues due to language barriers and fear of reprisal. So building in anonymous systems can build trust and reduce accidents. And so one implementation suggestion is create QR code posters in break rooms that share safety information. The other thing that I find is really key is introducing a buddy on your onboarding systems. So when somebody starts, make sure that they have somebody dedicated to them, they develop a relationship, and the individual is more apt to ask questions that they feel they're reluctant to do so because they feel, I don't want to look incompetent. I don't want them to judge me. Usually when you have a buddy, they're more apt to go to that buddy and say, hey, I've got a question. Can I ask you this? And they feel more comfortable in doing so. The other thing we absolutely recommend during onboarding is ensuring that you have 30, 60-day touch points during the probationary period. Don't leave it to the end, because really there can be misunderstandings and misconceptions during training, and you can rectify that early if there's any barriers they're experiencing. Again, opening up lines of communication so they can share that with you, so that you can make changes and hopefully get them through probation successfully. Wage compliance audits, so non-compliance risks, fines, and hiring bans that Jerusalem had talked about. So proactive audits prevent workforce gaps. The other thing that I think is with the LMIA wage increase could create issues, because I believe that those who you already have employed with the LMIA program, you'll be expected to increase their wage accordingly. And so this could throw off your compensation programs, if it puts that person beyond the compensation band for that particular position. And so those are things that you have to be aware of too. So some midterm actions, again, in international student re-engagement. So the individuals who are already in school, you had them working for you last summer, be proactive in reaching out to them again, because they can still, they actually can give you more hours now. They've gone from 20 to 24, and re-engaging them and getting them back in. Again, they're already trained, and because there's less, I guess, international students coming through the system, your availability of labor will decrease for summer. AODA compliance and violence and harassment policy compliance. So this is really interesting in, foreign workers coming to Canada. They're just learning the culture. These programs, not only are they mandatory for all organizations, but having them in place and making sure that they're well aware of them, again, during onboarding, and making sure that there is good systems in place, increases the trust, and the fact that they know the process, what their protections are, and who to go to if they're feeling that these are in play, really helps establish that connection with the employer, and again enhances engagement and enhances retention. So some of the long-term retention strategies, always investing in upskilling and trying to promote within. Not only does that retain your foreign workers, but it retains your workforce anyways, because ironically, the individuals who are working for you, if they're upskilling and feeling like they're staying ahead with their skills and they're marketable, actually keeps them with the employer, because that's a really valuable program to have, and people really appreciate that if they can do learning within and they're supported by the employer to do that. The other thing is fostering transparent communications. So, keeping employees informed about policy changes and how they can be affected can really, again, it increases trust in that collaboration. And, it's really interesting because psychologically, and if you're in communications at all, you'll know this, is that no information, the human nature, the psychology of human nature, people will fill the gaps negatively. So their fears come in play, and then they'll say, well, they're not communicating, so it must be bad. And so ensuring that you're communicating, even though you may not have anything to communicate, but just saying that is communication. And so being very transparent on your communication, again, it establishes that trust, establishes that collaboration, and people have that comfort level. Even if it's not good news, they know where you're at because you've communicated it. Building a culture of belonging. People stay, again, for the relationships and the opportunities, right? So celebrating diversity and inclusion through events and recognition, even in your mandatory programs through AODA and accommodation and violence and harassment, and knowing that there's programs within the workplace that they can turn to if they're feeling that, someone's not treated them well, or there's not respect in the workplace. Having resource groups for new hires and international staff, again, assigning a buddy, and then training managers on inclusive leadership and cultural sensitivity. It was interesting. I was working with an individual who used a cane. So she was a very talented individual. She was with the company a long time. And one of their social committees put on an event, and I think it was bowling. So they were inviting everybody to bowling. It was something that she couldn't do. And so now she was excluded from that event. So these are things that, think about, whether you change the event or whether you find a way to include these individuals who can't do the actual event. So always things to think about. And then again, competitive total compensation. And I think the biggest thing here is performance incentive. So if you've got your high potentials and they go above and beyond, you want to make sure you reward them. Otherwise, they're like, why do I keep doing this? Because people who are not working as hard as me are getting compensated the same. So if you can differentiate that, that's a huge thing. And also benefits matter, and health and dental and flexible work and family support. Again, those are links that keep employees with you so that you don't experience skill gaps in your labor. So again, really the long-term solutions, just always monitor and adapt by tracking turnover trends, especially among foreign workers, using exit interviews to identify preventable losses, and then staying agile and adjust policies based on labor market and immigration updates. Those are keys that you should always be looking at. So this is really interesting. And I'm going to end on this, and it's, current unemployment rates in our area. And you can see that they've gone up substantially. Likely, I don't know exactly where, but I'm making an assumption based on our current situation with the United States, is that in the manufacturing sector is probably where people are seeing some reductions. So what this causes is a unique situation where you've got a supply of candidates that you could choose from when you're doing your recruitment, but they may not have the skills that you're looking for. And so it really creates the situation where, there's a reduction in immigration because we have all these Canadians available for work, but they don't necessarily have the skills that you're looking for. So the challenging times, but things to think about. So that's why I put that on there. And there's a link there if you want to take a look at where I got this information. So now I'd like to open it up. I'd love to hear if there's any questions for myself or Jerusalem, and any comments in terms of anything that you learned or your takeaways that you found valuable.
Does anybody
I
have
can
any?
start.
Oh, yeah, sorry, Trish.
Sorry, Mike.
I just wanted to echo your words and just see, please feel free to pop on if anyone does have any questions or write it in the chat. We'd certainly love to make sure we find the answers you're looking for.
I have a question. I have two questions for Jerusalem, actually. So the Ontario Immigration Nominee Program, I know you said with the temporary work permits, as long as they've applied, they get a certificate to say that they can continue on. If with the Ontario Nominee Program, does that exist as well? Can they continue working if their permit has expired, even though the employer is working with the candidate to get them nominated? I wasn't clear on that one.
Yeah, so that's a good question. So the process is, it's kind of a lottery, right? Even though they're supported by the employer, so they would create an expression of interest, right? So once they get that invitation to apply, again, there is a wait period. Once that nomination of certificate is received, the work permit can actually be submitted. If the work permit is submitted before the previous one expires, then they will get that continuation authorization to continue working. However, if that one already expired, then they will not be able to. They have to wait until the approval of the work permit.
Okay, perfect. And then the other question I had is as a HR practitioner and dealing with payroll as well. Have you ever experienced a situation where the individual has applied and they've got this form, but it has expired, right? So they're kind of in that in-between situation. Has this SIN number ever been rejected? It's key to have that SIN number in order to process payroll. Has that situation ever occurred?
So if this is, sorry, because it got cut off a little bit. So the question is, if they have an authorization to continue working, is that the question? Sorry.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if there's ever been situations where they got the authorization and it was very close to their expiry. Have you ever seen an instance where their SIN number had expired with that, and so they couldn't be paid by the employer that they're working for?
Yeah, so what happens is, so let's say they had the work permit, there is already a valid SIN number, but it's expiring with the work permit. So once they receive that extension to continue working, Service Canada will not extend that SIN number. Okay. However, they said to us, and we've, a lot of employees with different employers have been able to continue working, that they will use the one that was supposedly expired SIN number to continue working. So some employers do face, they don't want to move forward. The SIN is expired. So we had to write them a letter saying that, this individual can continue working with the expired SIN number because Service Canada will not extend it. So it has been a challenge, but right now we're seeing that a lot of them continue to be paid. CRA has not said anything. until, and especially now that I mentioned that because the work permit processing is delayed, that extension is being extended for 1 year. They will have to be paid, even though the SIN is still will show that it's expired.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Those are good questions, Trish. We'll continue to extend it out to our audience. Does anyone have any additional questions that we can help provide some perspective on? So I will share that on the screen here, we see Ladder HR Solutions contact information. So after the fact, please do not hesitate to reach out and let Trish and her team know if you have any questions. We'll also be sharing Jerusalem's information as well too. So after this call, we will be sending out an email in the coming days with some information, some opportunities to learn how you can continue your learning and interact with our hosts today who are having us. Before we wrap up, I would just like to open it up one last time, see if anyone has anything, or Trish and Jerusalem, if you have any last thoughts before we wrap up our morning.
I will just say that to everybody, I know it can be daunting, like the minute you hear anything about immigration or anything about LMIA, or how can you as an employer support me to transition to permanent residency? It is, we hear that they don't want to hear it because they think it's a much bigger than what it is. But please do not hesitate if the employee that's coming to you has somebody that's assisting them, to contact you directly to explain, or if they contact us, our office, we do give a free 15-minute discovery call with employers to just go through it and explain to you so that you're very well aware. So it's not bigger than what you think. So we would be happy if you would be able to support your employees, and also for benefit of your company to not have that interruption or gap in the employment.
Excellent. And any last messages, Trish?
Oh, just thank you very much for the opportunity to present today. Again, Herman, thank you very much for providing the some research and information on that as well. That kind of really lands home as what our current situation is in the labor sector. So no, and I enjoyed presenting today. So thank you, Mike, for the opportunity.
Yes,
Well,
thank you. Thank you.
we're certainly grateful. The work of the chamber is not possible without our members and the expertise of our members. So we are certainly grateful for being a part of our chamber. And to folks on the call, we will continue to host similar workshops on varying themes to share information to help you do your work better. Please keep an eye on your emails for further information. If you are watching this after the fact, never hesitate. You can reach out to me at the chamber, and I'd be happy to connect you to the appropriate places to get any of the answers you are looking for. But in the meantime, wishing you all the very best and hope you have a wonderful day ahead, and we will see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone. Thank you,
Bye.
Mike. Take care.